walk up to, first of all, they're like, how you doing? Come on in, the water's fine. Like
No duder this time?
No duder, but very much like a lot of dad joke energy.
Okay.
And this is coming from a dad who makes jokes.
Okay.
But like not like this guy that I'll talk about in a second. But the second hot tub with the old man in it, the old man says, this one's taken.
What?
And he's like, just kidding.
He got you. Because you're susceptible.
Right.
Anyone says this one's taken, you're like, oh, sorry, I'll go to the third one.
Oh yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. Whole hot spring etiquette. Well, I get in with the old man. Now, it's not a big hot tub. I mean, there's enough room for me and this old man. And the old man is on his all fours and like putting one leg up in the air really high and then bringing it down, then putting the other leg. He's doing what do you call it? Calisthenics. And then he gets on his back and he's doing all this other stuff. And I'm like, this guy's he's not with the other guys, clearly.
Yeah.
This dude was a character. He started talking about, he like traveled around with that Rainbow Society thing. You know what I'm talking about? Like, there's a group called, it's like
a vacuum cleaner?
It's like I think it's some kind of cult. They like travel around in buses.
Oh.
Like a Rainbow Society or something. I don't know what it is, but I mean, it's like a bunch of hippies. And he had spent some time with them.
He matches the profile.
And, but then, dad number one, I'll call him, this is what he would be in the script, is sitting in he's the guy who's very loud. They're drinking Coors Light, they're very drunk. And the guy says, you guys know anybody who's got COVID? What? You guys know, like anybody in your inner circle got COVID? And of course, I'm not engaged. So I don't say anything. Nobody else says anything. He's like, yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I think it's a conspiracy.
It's better than him saying, well, I do. You're looking at one. I'm in your circle.
And so I'm like, is this what hot tubs are? Like hot tubs are coming down and sharing your space with a very flexible old man, by the way. Very flexible. Yeah. Very flexible
Heat just really makes your ligaments just fly.
And then a COVID denier. He's like, yeah, you know, hospitals get $37,000 for every COVID patient. I mean, they're just doing it for the money.
They're doing it for the money.
And I'm just like, do I have to listen to this bullshit? Do I have to listen to it? I guess I do because the water feels good.
It did feel good, didn't it?
And I was not in a.
How hot was it?
I could tell that based on the temperature of the second tub, the main tub would have been hotter than a hot tub. Like
110.
No, probably 120.
Oh.
Like, could scald yourself if you're not careful. Like you can't go in up to your neck and like just stay there unless you go out for it. Because it's like, but they can take it and they can reroute it so it cools down a little bit. Anyway, I was like, I'm not in because you know me, I've got the tendency to be like, well, let me tell you why it's not a conspiracy and you're full of crap. Listen, you know, but I don't typically do that with strangers. So, but I was like, I'm definitely not gonna say anything to this guy. He's not interested in the truth anyway. But so I kind of stuck around for a little bit and then I kind of walked a mile back to my campsite. And as I was walking back, I was just like, I don't know about hot springs. It's like, am I gonna find one that I can have to myself? Now, bear in mind that the next morning, I had my time, my coffee. I'm listening to multiple books as I travel these distances, and some of those books are really, I'll talk about one of them, one of the ones that was more of the fun listens. I listened to like 3 books throughout the trip. But I'm listening to ones that are a little bit more serious, a little bit more about spiritual things, contemplative things. And, again, I'm still having a really good time in my soul. But the expectation of what hot springs, I'm beginning to think that this is a lesson, that I'm being taught a lesson that like, you're going around looking for these hot springs, that ain't where it's at. You're not gonna find what you want. You cannot place this expectation on these hot springs. It's gonna be old, flexible old men and COVID deniers and et cetera, you know? But I head on to the next one. Again, my destination is determined by where the next hot spring is. So I get to one that is supposed to be one of the best ones. And I get to it and I'm like, is that it? It's a cow tub. It's like something you would like put feed or water in for cows, like a circle, metal tub. Something we would get to like bathe in on the show, but much bigger.
Okay.
And dirty. And of course the water kind of stinks because it's like sulfur. And I kind of park next to it and I realize there's all these people at all these campsites that all have a line of sight to the spring. I'm like, maybe it's just bad etiquette to like park right next to the spring because they're all saying, we all use the spring. You can't just like set your campsite up right next to the spring even though there's a fire ring. I didn't really know the etiquette, but I did as I looked around, had my first encounter with full nakedness.
There we go.
But I'm also thinking like, they're gonna come to this cow tub. I'm gonna be here?
Question mark?
And then I'm like, listen, not to. I have a hot tub at home. Okay, can I just say that?
It took you 3 days to come to that realization. You went all the way across the country.
Well, here's the thing.
Looking for something that you had at home.
That's an analogy that I'll talk about in a little bit, but I have a hot tub at home that is A, clean. B, I can dial in the temperature on my phone.
Yeah.
C,
Right.
I determine who goes in it.
Right, and how much clothes they have on.
Right, these people that I choose. It's my property.
Yeah, you're the king of the castle.
No cows, no algae, it doesn't smell like sulfur, it's filtered. It's right out in my backyard. Now I know that's a privileged thing to have be able to have a hot tub at your house. I'm blessed, I'm privileged. But I also am looking for hot tubs throughout the nation.
Yeah.
Hot springs.
Yeah.
And I got a hot tub at home.
This is interesting, yes.
That's better. And it hit me at that point. So I was like, you know what I'm gonna do?
Sounds like an opportunity to journal.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna bypass this. I'm gonna get back in my truck and I'm just gonna go up into the woods and find a parking space, a camping space, because the thing that I'm after is solitude and reflection.
Yes.
Contemplation.
There you go.
I go up the way into the woods to the point where I'm like, there's only one way out of here, and now what if there's a forest fire here, right? But I'm like, screw it.
Or a dude with photos. I don't know.
Yeah, right. I'm setting up here.
Who knew what you had to fear?
And this was the first night that I set up in a place where I had my map, and I had no service, but I've got my satellite phone deal. So I feel safe and connected in some way, and I know where I'm at. I can get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
But this is when, as it's starting to get dark, I start to think about bears, mountain lions, killers. You know?
Yeah. Funny thing is, I didn't think about any of that until I met you. Yeah.
Well, okay, so.
But I wasn't alone. You know, I think that makes a big difference.
And it gets to the point where it gets dark. And your eyes adjust to the light in your immediate vicinity. And it was a new moon. So the moonlight on our trip, and you probably noticed this, the starlight was incredible. There was no moon.
No moon.
Very little moon. I think the beginning of the trip was the new moon.
It was up during the day, but
Yeah.
then it set before night or something.
But, so no moonlight. So when it gets dark, you've got your little lantern there, and that's in your headlamp. So you can't see anything, and it's just every direction is just pitch black. And what could be in that dark really started to kind of freak me out. And I told the story a long time ago about the time I went down to like burn some stuff when I was working for my father-in-law. And
in the woods.
Yeah, and we were like burning. It was back when they had to keep everybody's
Medical record.
Yeah, you had to keep everybody's records as paper. And then I think it was just like old patients who had left or had died or whatever, and so you could shred them or you could just burn them. I don't know exactly how it works. It's 20 years ago. But I would be out there burning, and then I had recently watched The Ring, and so I think that the little girl from The Ring is gonna come up out of nowhere. I start getting this image. One of the reasons that in The Lost Causes of Bleak Creek that the not villain, if you will, but like one of the scary things in there is spoiler alert, the little girl, Ruby.
Yeah.
Because the idea of a little girl that sort of got something demonic inside her is the thing that is one of the most scary things for me. And when I get out there alone, I begin to like think like I'm gonna turn around and there's gonna be like a little possessed girl, like on all fours, turned over backwards, like crab crawling at me, like, come on, like, and then the moment I think about it, I'm like, you're an idiot. You're a 42-year-old man out here scared of the dark, and you're thinking about things you've seen in horror movies.
Yeah.
And then I like laugh it off, and then I like, start like making my dinner, and
Looking over your shoulder.
I like turn around, hear something. I'm like, what, is she here now? And then I'm like, man, this. If I knew that there was somebody 100 yards away, I wouldn't be thinking about this. Like just the proximity to another person. And I was like, what does that say about me that I want to be isolated, but I want to know where other people are? And when I don't know how far I am from other people, I begin to imagine that there's possessed people who are close. It's like, what's going on with me? So so eventually, after it gets too dark, I get up in my tent and I go to sleep. But then that morning I woke up, and again, same thing. Once the morning comes, the little girl can't come.
Yeah,
right? It's how physics works.
She hates it.
She's like, I cannot come out into the light. So I had the nice morning. I drove to a cave that had pictographs from thousands of years ago. And it also had metal bars that they had put on the full face of the cave so you can't get in there and screw them up.
Because people,
like, why people gotta be like that? Why can't you just not screw with the pictographs? Why you gotta put metal gates on the front of it?
Because even the most well-meaning people are gonna touch it. They're gonna just reach out and touch it and rub it before they've thought about if they should do that. You rub a pictograph for thousands of years, it's just a rock.
Yeah, but it was pretty cool. Took some pictures of that. That was the
Write down in your journal.
Toquima Cave, I think it's called. And
sounds right.
I took pictures and I was like, man, what were they trying to say? It looks like just circles and lines. Maybe they were just like, let's draw circles and lines.
Yeah.
Probably. Or maybe this is like representative of some sort of contact they made with aliens, which I'm gonna try to do tonight.
I mean, it could have been a football coach like doing an offensive play.
Yeah, the ancient football. So then again, I've got, the cool thing is I've got this, I've got my app, the Gaia app, and I've pre-downloaded all the maps for this area, for all the places I'm gonna go. And it's got layers that you could turn on, like this is the US Forest Service, this is the topography, whatever.
Possessed girl layer.
This is your cell phone service coverage. Like you can see where you're gonna get into cell phone service by carrier. So super easy to turn, and then you can download all the maps at a time. Anyway, so I saw that there was a ghost town down, like an hour down. I mean, it's only like 15 miles away, but because of the crazy roads and stuff, it just took me an hour to get there. But a ghost town that had a hot spring. Oh, I'm like, okay, all right, this sounds fun.
Double.
So there's this part of Nevada near that Toquima Cave.
I know where Duder's going now.
There's these sort of the hills that have all the trees on them that are like conifer trees of some kind, like some kind of pine tree. And it's really awesome because they're like not super thick and they just have this sort of like fairy tale quality to them.
Yeah.
But then when you get to the base of them, it just turns into just field. And there's usually cattle, and the people have made ranches out of all this stuff. But dirt roads that just go forever.
Yeah.
And so I go down this dirt road and I get to a place called Potts Ranch, I think it was. And it's just an old house, an old farmhouse, and like a barn that looked like they've been abandoned for many, many generations.
That's cool.
Or many, many decades, but probably been around since like, 1800s or whatever.
Did you walk through it?
Yeah, I took some pictures and walked in a little bit, but it was like the floor was falling apart. I'll share some of those pictures. And
I bet you weren't thinking, I'm gonna camp here tonight.
no, because I wasn't far enough. I hadn't moved far enough. I needed to keep moving in order to kind of get back to a place where I could be close to home by the end of the trip. And this is, I'm almost at my furthest point away from home. I'm kind of in the middle of Nevada at this point. But I'm like, okay, but there's a hot spring here. Here's where it's at on the map, and I kind of went past the house and went down this dirt road. And I get down, and I'm like, oh yes, this is gonna be awesome. There's nobody around for miles. And I get down there, and I'd seen a picture of the hot spring on the internet because I had service for a second. And it was the same deal. It was like, there's a creek, and they've run the creek through a pipe into a tub. I get down there, the tub's gone. The pipe literally just is there and just goes onto the ground.
Huh.
They've removed
The tub.
the
The ghost.
There's just a little pool there that they've kind of dammed up that's about 6 inches deep. So So I just like sat there and stuck my feet in there. Like a poor little boy. It felt great, but I was like, how awesome would this be if the tub was here? Why you gotta take the tub
away? You should have brought your own tub next time, man.
I thought about it. I was like, could you have a baby pool that you inflate and like mobile hot tub? It's gotta be like made of Kevlar.
Yeah.
But
you make those for like really rambunctious
I did have my first shower there. I had been in a couple of hot tubs, but I had my solar shower, like heated the water up with the sun.
You talking about a sack?
It's a sack that
with
has,
a tube.
Yeah, basically. A solar shower sounds more sophisticated. I showered myself. I used soap. I washed my parts.
Feels good.
It feels great. You haven't washed your parts in a few days.
You gotta wash your parts.
Yes. And I had it was naked in the middle of a field.
Yeah,
where mountains on both sides, and just valley as far as I could see both ways. And I was like, this is pretty awesome. I mean, I wish that the tub was here, but this is pretty awesome. And it's funny, the moment that my whole perspective began to shift from like, are you learning your lesson yet? You come with these expectations. Drop your expectations, man. That's the whole point of this. You gotta drop the expectations. The tub may not be there. It doesn't matter. Take a shower, wash your parts.
It's not something you can just reflect on. I think the way you say it, it does seem like it's like, I should have known this. I should have just realized this.
You have to experience
it. But
I
think that's the thing that I'm learning. What I was saying in the last one too was like, it made sense when people talked about connecting with nature or connecting with themselves in nature, connecting with God in nature. Whatever your intention is, it makes sense, but it's different to actually experience it. And I guess that's true for just lessons in life, is that like, the strongest lessons you learn are the ones that you experience. And which is comforting as a parent, to think about that in terms of your kids too, that like you can't protect them from everything. And it's like, that's the most powerful way to change who you are as a person, is to go through things. And so, but maybe I'm hearing too much in what you're saying, that it almost feels like I had to go through this in order to learn it. But it's like,
well, no,
I went through this and I was able to learn it.
It's very much what's happened. Listen, I had my therapy appointment last night to kind of follow up for my trip. And of course I ended up sharing everything that happened internally, which even that morning when I'm taking my shower and sitting next to this hot creek and stuff, there was a lot of things that I was sort of realizing, more than just the surface level of this trip represents my life in a lot of ways, and the way that I live and the things that I seek.
It's not just something you can write down. It's not something that just happens in your brain, is what I think we're saying.
Yeah, and that was a big, I'll share a little bit of that, because I think that was one of the biggest realizations on the trip, is that I've talked about how I live in my mind. I'm a victim of my thoughts, which is a very normal thing, but that, heart knowledge, experiencing things, something just being true because it is, not because you can rationalize it, explain it, analyze it, break it down, and present it to someone else, but something that you can just experience and sort of know intrinsically, like access inside yourself, was something that was just very visceral and very powerful, that was continuing to happen throughout. But that day, now, I brought the special chair. I had intentions to try to connect with aliens. Now, the thing I didn't talk about is I had listened to the 30-minute guided meditation from Dr. Stephen Greer in the CE5, I think is what app. Again, this is from that Netflix documentary, which I was fascinated by. Again, I don't believe it.
Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind.
And basically the fifth kind representing essentially a cosmic connection to aliens, not like just seeing them physically, but it was interesting.
Receiving a signal.
It's based on the fact that if there is something to the idea of a collective consciousness of the universe, then other intelligent life out there is a part of that. And we can, if we get into that sort of, what you want to call it, metaphysical, spiritual plane, there is some way to have a connection. Now, again, the rational part of my brain, which is very dominant in my mind, in my personality is like, this is almost assuredly bullshit, right? Like I would be flummoxed if this were to be true, right? If you really could connect with aliens in this way. But also, why the hell not try? Who am I going to hurt if I try? And wouldn't it be cool if it could happen? So tonight, I'm gonna try. Because I finally listened to like the way he kind of talks about the meditation process and how you're supposed to like basically broadcast where you're at so they'll find you. So, but I see this hot spring on the map that I'm not too far from, and I'm like, well, let's go there. Maybe there'll be a tub. And it was funny, the moment that my expectations completely evaporated is the moment that I found the best hot spring experience. This is the next to last one. I stop at a place that I'm not going to tell you where it's at because I heard you check. But I go there and there is 2 large families with 2 large trailers who are camped right next to the spring. And they're getting out of the spring like they've been bathing, like they've taken a little break or whatever. And I kind of just drive up to the spring because I'm like, I'll just, I wasn't planning on camping there. I was like, I'm just gonna take a dip, take a soak. And I'm like, you guys got a good spot. And he's like, well, we're leaving. I'm like, oh, and he's like,
you do that.
And he was like, and I just cleaned the hot tub. So basically it was a heart-shaped stone tub. That the way it works is, again, they all work the same way. You've got the hot water source from the spring that somebody has piped into this thing. It fills up and then it kind of goes out over a spillway, but there's a plug in the bottom of a lot of these that you can pull so it'll drain and then you can scrub it. And the dude, because they had been there for a few days, antelope hunting, didn't know that was something that happened. They had 2 antelopes already.
Like draped over their trailer or something? Butchered or something?
I didn't see him, he just said we've killed 2.
Huh. He drained and scrubbed the thing.
He had drained and scrubbed it, and he had just filled it up, and he like showed me how it worked. And then they left. And I was like, so what, am I about to have a heart-shaped tub all to myself? No, I'm not. Because now it's just like 2 o'clock. I was like, there's no way no one's gonna show up. But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna camp here. So I go ahead and I take my rooftop tent out, set it up. I'm probably, I don't know what the etiquette is, but I'm probably closer to the hot spring than I should be, but I was like, I wanna get in it. Not that nobody else is gonna get in it, but I'm probably 100 feet from it, so it's pretty close.
Okay.
And then up rolls 2 cars, 2 older couples get out, and they walk up to me, and they're like, so, is that the spring? And then it hits me, I'm like, they think I'm an authority. Because I'm here, and because I'm close to the spring, they assume that I have some sort of intrinsic authority here.
Yeah.
This is how people's brains work.
You can use it against them.
And I was like,
You could sing that.
yeah, it's just been cleaned. It's dirty. No. I played it like this. I'm going to be generous with the spring. Okay. I'm the keeper of the spring. That's what these people believe. I'm going to be generous. And I said, it's just been cleaned. It should be warmed up for you. And they're like, well, we're just going to stay for a little bit. I mean, if you don't mind. And I was like, this is working. And I'm like, take all the time you want. As if I have any authority at all. But I'm just going with it because they seem to be going with it.
Okay. You could also told them, take 10 minutes.
The authority. Because if you give somebody a limit, they naturally want to exceed it. Don't give them a limit. Just be generous.
Be nice, and then they're like, I'm gonna give him space.
And then they said
he lives here.
They were from.
Look at his beard.
They were from Ohio. I said, Chuck Testa? And they were like, oh yeah, the commercial. I was like, I made that commercial. Really? And boy, that got me some brownie points.
Seriously?
Yeah. They're like, he keeps the spring and he makes commercials. How does he do it all?
Because that is all.
And so I talked to them for a while, and
you were in the spring.
No. I was
standing over it, keeping it.
I was sitting in my alien chair next to my truck, on this side where you had to walk past me to get to the spring. That couple ended up leaving. Another couple showed up, a younger couple. That was the hashtag van life couple. They were taking the pictures that I told you about during your story.
Yeah. Priorities out of whack.
They ended up being really cool. They stayed the night, and an older man stayed the night. Now, not really close to me, and the way it ends up working is you end up spending, you can spend about 10 or 15 minutes in a really hot tub. This one's, the temperature of the water was 130 degrees coming out of the pipe, so you'd have to like fill it up and then divert it, or put a restrictor in the pipe. Very engineering behind these things. Put a restrictor in it so it's not quite filling up fast enough and it's slowly losing temperature, so it probably gets down to like 110. And so that night I just got into the hot tub by myself for 20, 30 minutes, looked at the stars. Everyone was completely quiet. They were both gone. They were in their van and in their camper asleep, not talking. And I'm just out there. Man, this is awesome. I get it. Like I'm in this heart-shaped hot tub, and then it hit me. Oh, I need to reach out to the aliens. So I began the meditative process. I went through the steps, which ended with me. I'm in the heart-shaped hot tub. You know the one.
Oh yeah, because you start
with the galaxy.
With the galaxy.
You move to the solar system.
You funnel your signal down.
You move to the North America. You
give them the bearing.
You
You get specific bearing.
Bomb down to there. Yeah, and let me tell you.
That was the moment, right? You're like, I'm right here.
I'm here. I'm like, you can't miss me. Heart-shaped hot tub. And the thing I can most closely relate it to is the time I tried to speak in tongues in New York, when I was trying to share the gospel with the man on the bench. He couldn't speak English, and I was like, Lord, this is when I speak in tongues. This is it. And I was like, almost going to open my mouth and to see what happens, you know? Because I was under the understanding that speaking in tongues was for evangelistic purposes, not for the edification of the body. It's theological stuff that no one cares about, unless you're one of those people who cares about it. Anyway, they didn't come. They didn't show up. I did it twice, and I was so committed. I was like, I am willing to believe this. Like, if you just show up, I am here. I am ready.
There's also other people here.
It didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Be quiet.
Now, I'm not saying I'll never try again, but I tried so hard that night. I can't imagine trying harder, but Dr. Stephen Greer suggests doing it in a group. They were there.